Hello everyone, my name is Kris and today I'm reviewing Phoning Home. I'll just run through a bit of information about it first. Phoning Home is made by Ion Lands, a small Berlin-based game development company, and this game is currently in beta, available on Steam. Now about the game itself. Phoning Home is a game where you take control of a small mobile unit named Ion, and you are tasked with gathering resources and solving problems that enable the ship that, as you can see, just crash landed on the unknown planet to send out a message or to leave the planet entirely. The ship originates from a planet called P1, which through story elements I am led to believe is fully mechanical, so having no organic life whatsoever. You start on day 1, the ship's onboard AI gives you the instructions you need to go out and find the various resources, and gives you instruction on how to turn those resources into useful items through the in-game crafting system located within the inventory. The game, at the beginning, sort of includes a basic tutorial, so it tells you what to do, as in just shown on screen. Weaponize yourself by picking up a pipe in this case, showing you movement controls and the other elements that you have about your mobile unit. It is quite the interesting game to start with. The movement controls are fairly standard. WASD to move, and thruster is a little difficult to control at first, but once you get the hang of it, it works fairly fine. It sort of has a delay at the start, so you hold it down and then it takes like a half a second for your mobile unit to actually take off to get up on top of rocks and things like that. You can't get very high, and you also can suffer fall damage if you go too high. The crafting system is pretty basic. You have the items that you have in your inventory, and you have the craft section at the top. You just scroll through the list of what you wish to create, click the craft item button, and it appears in your inventory. As long as you have the items within your inventory, the materials, then you will craft what you need. The materials are located through the open world. They're just sitting about the place depending on what you need, such as, in this case, photonics are on screen. You just walk up to it, press E, and that extracts the materials and they end up in your inventory. There are several different materials to use, and they appear in various locations, and sometimes in various forms, such as in the forested area, photonics are harvested from mushroom looking things, but in the desert area photonics are in little boxes, obviously left over from the previous civilization. The lighting effects and weather effects present within the game are quite good. You will sometimes experience these small sort of purple things that come out of the ground as light effects, and they make the surrounding area go purple, which is quite good. The sun effects seem to work pretty well. There's a bit of a haze in distant areas. The rain looks good, and it hits the camera as well and leaves rivulets on the camera lens, it seems. In the desert region there are sandstorms which block visibility and add their own sound effects. With the rain as well, it's the same sound effects. With the rest of the sound, I was quite surprised at the level of atmospheric sound or ambient sound. So while you're in the forest, you can hear insects, the rustle of trees, the squawk of unknown animals as they sort of go about their day. The music sounds good, is well made, and it seems to be reactive in a way, perhaps. It is not a constant thing, so sometimes you'll be wandering around and there'll be no music, and other times, especially scripted events, music will come about and fits the scenario, especially with combat. If you're engaged in a creature like that giant rock elemental, which when I first came across it, destroyed me utterly, there would be combat music associated with it. As you can see, there's some rain there that dribbles down the lens. This shot shows a interesting tree that was covered in the photonic plants. Quite interesting. There's a few more trees later on that had another different look to them, more than just sort of native pines that are there. The gameplay of the game itself is like fairly standard in respect of you're wandering around exploring things, gathering resources, using those resources to create items and solve problems. Sometimes you encounter hostile things like this sort of cloud of insecty sort of stuff that just tried to kill me, but I beat it into a pulp. Other times there are these giant rock elementals, which, as I said, the first one I came across completely annihilated me, and then this time I had a gun to shoot it, but it still seemed to ignore the gun completely. I couldn't seem to kill it. I shot it a lot, so I just ran away. And slightly later on there's a pterodactyl thing that I had to scare off as part of the story. I'm not sure if I could have killed it, but I shot it a few times and it ran away, so that was fine. Those later on in the desert area I came across these holes in the ground that had worms in them. I didn't even try to kill them, I just ran from them, and that seemed to be a pretty good tactic. So far it seems don't try to kill things, just run away from them unless they pursue you, like the cloud of orangey stuff, but that was pretty easy to kill. The story located in this game is interesting. As I said at the premise before, where you're a small robot trapped on a planet with the guidance of the AI, the system AI, that you have to solve the various problems to get off the planet. More elements of the story get revealed later when you go into the desert zone and you find towns, I won't say towns, but settlements, I think is a better word for it, of the previous inhabitants, which all seem to have disappeared now. And there are messages there which you can decode, and it sounds like a pretty dangerous area for these people that, or creatures or whatever that were there before. So it makes you more and more curious about where they've disappeared to. So that's a reason perhaps to continue on with it, to answer these questions that the game has brought up about itself. As I stated before, I don't know if I did, you will come across another ship from the same planet later on, and that ship's mobile unit is missing, so you have to go out and find it, which is what the initial part of the game is about. But I hadn't actually found the other unit by the time I've done this video, but I'm going to continue to go through and see if I can find it. And that sort of part of the game, you have to find this other unit to be able to get off the planet at all. Somewhat interesting. I'm more interested to find out what happened to the other inhabitants of the planet. As you progress through the game, the AI, the ship AI, your ship AI, sort of unlocks more and more abilities to use. I'd like to say abilities, but sort of technology perhaps. So at the start you have nothing but your pipe, and then later on you get a teleporter and the gun and other bits and pieces. So that all helps with problem solving and so forth. It is quite the interesting game in respect of what it offers, but it does it in such a way that it's not as easy as you might think. I mean, the placement of resources in the forested zone were fairly even but spread out, so you could always find what you needed. Whereas in the desert zone, the placement of resources is very concentrated but in very separate areas. So these little settlements, like I'm walking through now, have a high concentration of resources, but there's nothing in between the little settlements. So just before there was a map, so you had to sort of remember the map so you could go out and find those resources that you needed to find, while making sure you've got to manage what you've got left to fix the various things and fix yourself. I mean, it's pretty easy to take damage, so like this from this worm thing that came up. So you have to make sure you can create the items to repair yourself. You have to manage your personal resources. On the little HUD, The blue bar is for your battery level, so you have to make power packs to refresh that battery level. The orange bar is your total thruster fuel, and the yellow bar is your current, your sort of like jump fuel as it is. So if you use your thruster, that goes down very quickly, and then the thruster stops working. But over time, the orange bar goes down as well. So you have to make items to refuel the thruster, refuel your battery, and to restore your health, which is separate from your battery. But your teleporter and your photon gun, they both use your battery power as well, so you have to manage those resources. It can be pretty difficult sometimes, but once you get the hang of it, it's alright. So I quite like the look of it, and I think once it goes beyond beta, I'll look into it some more. Thanks. This was interesting to do.